Hello, fifth grade. I hope you are doing well and staying safe at home. We're back for another week of online learning, and I'm so excited about today's text, something you should be very familiar with. It's called Today's Telephone. And I hope you remember that all of these resources you can find online at hcboe.net. You can click on the online learning link and find math and ELA resources that you can do right at home. So even though we're not together, we can continue learning. But before we look at today's text, let's go over the answers to last week's reading. Today's text is called Today's Telephone, and it's by Barbara Radner from 2005. Before we begin reading, they've given us this box here that we can look at for some additional information. It says, Alexander Graham Bell, 1847 to 1922, remember those are the years he lived, was a scientist, engineer, and inventor who was born in Scotland, but became an American citizen in 1882. He invented the telephone in 1876 after years of putting in effort and proving his determination to technology. In his later years, he famously considered his invention a distraction, refusing to keep a telephone in his study. As you read, take notes on how communication technology has changed over time. Here we go, paragraph 1. Today's telephone has a long history as part of American technology. It is American because an American, Alexander Graham Bell, invented it. The story begins very long ago when there were no telephones. The only way to get a message to someone else was to write it and send it. Long ago, there were messengers who traveled on foot. There were people who would run from place to place transporting messages to other people. They would run miles and they had great endurance. Later communications improved in that people would send letters that traveled by wagons. In time, the mail would travel by train. After the invention of a new communications tool, people could send messages quickly. That tool was the telegraph, which used a line that went from one place to another. It took years to put all the telegraph lines across America. At one end of the line, a person used a device to send a message by code. At the other end, the message would be received and translated by another person. With those telegraph lines, people could send messages almost immediately, although it was not person to person. The telegraph was a remarkable invention, but it did not let people talk to each other. The telegraph meant the end of the Pony Express, which had been an American invention of another sort. The Pony Express involved riders who would carry a bag of mail from one place to another, riding quickly on horses. It was like a relay race. Those riders were replaced by telegraph operators. They had to know the code to get the messages across the wires. On one end of the telegraph, an operator clicked the message. On the other end, a machine would make the same clicks. At first, a person had to listen and note what the clicks said, but then they figured out how to make the machine record them. Still, there was no telephone. Then Alexander Graham Bell invented it. He tried many ways to get a machine that would work, and he was persistent because he failed many times. After many attempts, he perfected the machine. Once he had done that, the world all wanted telephones. The next changes for the telephone were the same as the telegraph. People had to put in those lines. If you see a picture of Chicago in 1900, you will see lots of wires downtown. The first telephone lines went from one person's phone to another. Those were called landlines. Then they added what were called switching stations, so one line could reach more than one place. Still, it would take years to get the telephone system to work efficiently. Today, there are cell phones, which do not need wires. They use signals that travel through the air, carried by systems that depend on the science of physics. Many people now do not have a landline anymore and just depend on their cell phone. The cell phone is changing communication and even impacting how people live. It can connect people through text as well as voice. It can download music from the internet. Some people even use their computers to talk to other people with video screens. Those are the latest inventions and innovations in communication. So the telephone is still changing. We've read our text, we can go ahead and look at our questions. Remember that as we look at these questions, be sure to read each answer choice before using our test-taking strategy of eliminating answers. You must read them all in order to make sure you've chosen the correct answer. Let's look at number 1. This is a Part A, Part B question. Number 1 says, which of the following best identifies the central idea of this article? This is asking us to think, what does the author want me to know? Or, what was the main point of this article? Think back to what you read. You can even look back in the text. What did the author want you to know after you had read this? Since this is the standard we've been working on for several weeks, I'm going to let you do Part A yourself. Once you've found the answer to Part A, let's look at Part B. Part B has to match Part A. If you cannot connect your answer from Part A to Part B, then it's wrong. And it's okay to go back and change our answer to Part A if we need to. But let's look at Part B. Part B says, which phrase from the text best supports the answer to Part A? We need to think to ourselves, when we read through A through D, does this sentence prove I'm right in Part A? Does this sentence match my answer? Does this sentence tell me that I am correct? Make sure that your answers match in Part A and Part B. Let's look at question 3. Question 3 says, which statement best describes the connection between the Pony Express and telephones? This question wants us to look at a connection. How is the Pony Express connected to telephones? How are they both alike? And so, looking at connections or links on a chain, like looking at a family tree, what do these two things have in common? So let's read through our answers. A, they were both replaced with faster ways of communicating. B, sending text messages through a cell phone was inspired by the Pony Express. C, although people use cell phones today, people still send letters through messengers. D, though the cell phone is faster than a messenger, it is not as reliable. In order to see the connection between these, you need to look back at the text. You need to ask yourself, were both of these replaced? What did the article tell me? That the cell phone and text messages were inspired by the Pony Express. Are people still sending texts or sending letters through messengers? And is the cell phone not reliable? Go back in the text and find evidence to support your answer of how the Pony Express and telephones are connected. How are they both alike? Now that we've finished our 3 questions, we can go ahead and look at the writing prompt. This should be fun for you all who enjoy technology and STEM. Here is our prompt for this week. Besides communication, what other aspects or parts of modern life have been impacted by advances in technology? Think to yourself, how has life changed because of technology? Not just communication, which we read about in our text, but think about other ways life has been changed by technology. Here's a hint. Think back to when you studied early America in social studies. How has life changed from those original colonists to today? How has technology helped that change?
That's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed our text on telephones. Think about that the next time you grab your cell phone to play a game. If you have any questions or need any help, remember that you can email your teachers. You can email me, birchfieldm@hcboe.net, and I'd be more than happy to help you. Stay safe and have a great weekend.